again, everyone. This is Chris from OverclockerClub. A little while back we looked at the new case from RIOTORO. In fact, RIOTORO altogether is a brand new company. But this was the CR1080. It's a great case. You can check out the review on the OverclockerClub website. Today, though, we're going to look at the next case from RIOTORO, which is the CR1080. It's a much smaller case, so we'll get it out of the box and see what it looks like. Looking at the top of the case, we have the power button. We have the microphone and headphone jacks, the hard drive activity light, and two USB 3.0 ports, followed by the reset button. Along the perimeter of the I/O panel, we have a little section that is lit up by LED lights, and then the top vent. And looking at the side, we have the protrusion in the side window. That's for the CPU cooler. And on this side, we have a vent for the power supply. And looking at the bottom, we have 4 rubber feet, one at each corner. And then we have the vented bottom section that actually has provisions for some cooling fans. Now looking at the rear of the case, we have 7 PCIe expansion slots. We have a vented section here at the top corner, and we have an opening for the power supply. We have the opening for the motherboard I/O panel. We have a small cooling fan vent, and then we have 2 punch outs for external liquid cooling. Now we'll take a look at the front fascia. We have a plastic bezel that surrounds the front. We have a metal mesh perforated front panel, the optical drive opening, and the red RIOTORO logo. We'll get the front fascia popped off and see what's happening behind there. We'll zoom in for a little better look. And at the upper right is the 120 millimeter front intake fan. We have space for a second fan, then a third smaller fan, and then the opening for the optical drive bay. And then we have 2 small openings to pass cables and such through. And then we look at the back of the fascia, and we have a foam mesh filter, and then the opening you can see there for the optical drive bay. Now on the side panel, you can see the way it sticks out to allow clearance for your CPU cooler. 120 millimeter maximum on the height there. We'll pop this clear side window off and look inside. Tilt it up there for a little better view. We have 300 millimeters for the video card. We have 2 vented sections, and we have some openings for cables to pass through. At the top there we have a couple more small openings. And then looking in the front, there's the 120 millimeter intake fan, space for a second fan, and we have a 3-pin plug for the 120 millimeter fan. The bottom vent allows us to mount cooling fans in the bottom, 120 millimeter fans. Now we're ready to remove this panel. There's a vent here, and we'll open that up and look at the back side. There's a nice mesh filter that is magnetized, so that's easy to remove. There's a hardware box at the upper right, and we'll see what's inside. We usually have our additional hardware, some zip ties, screws, and such. After we get that box out, we'll look at the hard drive tray. This is made for a regular hard drive, but it actually has mounting provisions for a solid state drive. So that's a nice plus. That snaps back into position. And next to it, I really like this feature. It's another hard drive tray, and we remove the retaining screw here, and this actually hinges and pivots out. For convenience, we look at the back side of it, and there are mounting provisions for another solid state drive. There's a vented section to allow air to pass through. And then we have our cables. First one is the USB 3.0. We have our audio, and then all of the little plugs that go into the motherboard to control it. And next, we'll look at where the power supply mounts. It occupies that space. The front area here is really nice for cable management. Now we're ready to build the system and check the thermal performance. Well, it turns out that the D14 that we use for all of our standard testing is just a little too large for this case. So we'll have to go with a smaller cooler for the build and the thermal testing. We got the OCC test system assembled and installed into the case, and the only issue we had again was the Noctua D14 was just too large for this case. Let's pop this side door off. The side panel that kicks out again, as we mentioned earlier, really helps to allow room for your power supply cable coming into your GPU. Now we went with the Be Quiet Shadow Rock LP, which is a low profile cooler, to give us some more clearance here. And the nice thing about these low profile or downflow style of coolers is they push air down across your memory, across your VRM and some other components. So they actually do a little extra help in cooling things. Now you also notice that the motherboard is inverted in this case. That's why our GPU looks like it's upside down, and it essentially is. Since we have our access door on the right hand side of the case, the motherboard is flipped over. So that changes the way things look a little bit. Now again, the case only comes with a single 120 millimeter front fan. It is a blue LED fan. I put a little power to the case a little bit ago, and I noticed that, and the trim piece along the I/O panel, it actually lights up with a red LED. Now, if you're going to add additional cooling to this case, which I do recommend because I anticipate when we do our thermal testing, we're going to run a little on the warm side since we only have one fan really doing any air movement in and out of the case. The second space here for adding another 120 millimeter fan, I would definitely recommend using a fan there. And we do have space again at the bottom for a couple of 120 millimeter fans. It looks like you could get a 120 millimeter radiator or a 240 millimeter radiator also down there, and there's just not enough room for the radiator and a fan, so really we can only add fans down there. We could put a 120 millimeter liquid radiator in the front if we wanted to, and we do have space for an 80 millimeter rear exhaust fan also, which my guess is that would go a long way to help keeping this case cool. So we'll go ahead and get this buttoned up, get the power to it, and do the thermal testing. All right, we have everything assembled and powered up. We're ready to do our thermal testing here shortly. We'll post the results of the thermal testing online, as we usually do here. I want to talk about the case. The MSRP on this case is $79.99, which I think is very reasonable, very fair for a case with these capabilities. It's just phenomenal that we can get a full-size ATX motherboard in this case, and the cable management is just again, phenomenal. I like the red LED highlight around the top I/O there. I like the blue LED fan you can see peeking through the front there. I like the full side window with the bump out there that gives you a little more room for your CPU cooler and the wiring for your GPU. I like the dual chamber design that isolates the motherboard on one side of the case and your power supply and hard drives on the other side of the case. I think RIOTORO really hits the ball out of the park with this one. So again, this is the RIOTORO CR1080. I'm Chris with OverclockerClub, and thanks for watching.